Well, I think to begin with, I'd like to thank Nina and Bob for the opportunity to at least give some of the history, background, philosophy behind the founding of SENTAC. We have to go way, way, way back more than 50 years ago, about 51, 52 years ago. And there were a group of us at the American Academy of Otolaryngology, before it had the suffix of head and neck surgery, who were interested in children. And we couldn't really get together. We'd meet at the bar, we'd meet for coffee, and we decided, let's think about setting up an organization. Then the next fall, it was myself, I think Charlie, probably, am I blanking out? Sylvan Stool and some others met at airport meeting room in Atlanta, and we discussed this one way or another. I had some ideas. My fundamental idea was that I had, by this time, because of what I was doing in basic science, this, that, and the other, I had exposure to several different types of professional organizations. And the ones in otolaryngology, I really felt missed the purpose. They were much too like a union trade shop or like a guild, not really focused on the problem. And our problem was how to take care of ear, nose, and throat problems in children. Now, also, as some of you may know, I've been pretty much playing around with history ever since medical school, and was well aware of the beginnings of medical and scientific organizations. It was in Bologna, where the group of people from all disciplines in Bologna, University of Bologna at that time was really the high point of intellectual life in Europe, and certainly in the Western countries. And they would get together once a month, and they would represent many different activities: philosophy, physics, medicine, engineering, chemistry, you name it, alchemy. And they would discuss. But the object here was, it was a group of people whose interest was on science, not a particular science, but science per se. So I said to myself, gee, why don't we try this in medicine? It was pretty radical. And then they all sat around, and finally nobody wanted to do anything. So I said, I do the bylaws. That was their mistake. So I went back and set up a set of bylaws, which we pretty much have intact now. And the important part of this is that this society would be open to people who are interested in ear, nose, and throat advances in children, irregardless of what guild they belong to, or what union belong to, or what type of initials they had after their name or before their name. So from the very get-go, we had audiologists, speech pathologists, pediatricians, pediatric neurologists, otolaryngologists, even some people from industry. So this was a rather Catholic group, and seems to have worked like this throughout the years. I also built in another thing which we had, this was in the 60s, 70s, things were pretty radical. And you'll see that in the bylaws, there's this thing called a committee on committees. One of the things which I had noticed in the professional organizations I belonged to, and this time it was literally an old boys network. And if you knew John, you got to be elected and run it. And if you knew Bill, you got this. And if you didn't know Gregory, nothing would happen to you. It was pretty much a self-perpetuating cycle. So the committee on committees was set up so it would be independent of the board of directors. It would be an independent group that would look at the membership and best guess as who should be nominated for what office, who should sit on committees. So in a way, this was, separation of church and state, but at least was an attempt on paper to ensure that not one group would dominate, that one group would call all the shots, that this would be spread across. So we have a couple of things going on here. We have a membership which is dictated by the interest, and we have a set of bylaws which attempts to ensure that one group doesn't take over for good. So this is fundamentally how it was put together. I forget where the first meeting was. You said it was at Einstein, probably. I probably have a picture of it somewhere. But this seemed to thrive. Much to my delight and surprise, we're now 50 years old. Yeah, as we've progressed over the years, we certainly, because we had included audiology, speech pathology, we were populated not just by men, but by women. And as we saw more women coming into the workforce of pediatric otolaryngology, we had many women and many women who were leaders. I think we're probably one of the earliest societies that really had no prejudice, either overt or covert, against anybody who was interested in this, be their whatever their callings, sexual, racial, religious, etc. So this is pretty much the story of SENTAC. It was an idea that sprang from the history of medical and or rather scientific meetings. It's an idea that looked at you need a diversity of ideas. You need to listen, to meet, to interact with people who will know more about a subject that you have to deal with than you do, and perhaps that will make what you do with a patient somewhat better. So it's a very simple story.